So, what I'd like to talk about today is something that frankly bothers me quite a lot about the way that people discuss the concept of rights in our society and in the modern day. And you hear all the time people use the term, the government's taking our rights, or so and so organization is taking our rights, or we're losing our rights. And this really bothers me. This bothers me because, well, we have to take a few steps back and really examine the question of what a right is. What is a right? Because this is crucially important. Because if you're going to talk about human rights and you're going to talk about liberty and freedom and protecting our rights, then you have to understand what a right actually is. And sadly, too few people in our society understand what rights are, truly understand what rights are. Because rights are not opinions about what is acceptable behavior. They're not opinions. Rights are behaviors that exist in reality, in physical material reality. For example, the right to bear firearms is not something that is an opinion. Like, oh, this society here, they believe you have the right to bear firearms. This society here does not. No, the right to bear firearms is a human right that is inherent to reality. The Second Amendment simply codifies a right which already exists. And that actually is outlined in the Declaration of Independence, where it says these rights are God-given, they're inalienable, and they're fundamental. And that's what they're getting at, is this concept which applies to all rights, which is that if a right exists, it exists objectively in nature. That's why the term right means correct and true and also moral, because they are equivalent. There's this whole idea of the ought-is gap, which is put into people's minds that you can never define, moral behavior based on objective reality, and this is completely false. This is completely false. This is an illusion that has been given to the masses to keep us locked in the prison of moral relativism. And I know this prison well because for many, many years, I was a moral relativist. For many years, I even was teetering on the edge of objective relativism and believing that there's no such thing as objective reality, that the experience that we all live within is simply just a manifestation of our perception and our subjective experience. And you hear this type of language used when people say, well, my truth is blah, 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 blah. Well, my truth is blah, 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 blah. That's bullshit. There's no such thing as your truth or my truth. There's your experience and my experience, sure, but there is only the truth. There is only truth, which is that which is actually existent in reality, in the shared reality that we all live in. Or, if something is not objectively true, and it's simply what someone believes, then it's their perception, it's their belief. And you can have a belief that is not aligned with reality. You can also have a belief that is aligned with reality, with truth. But back to the whole concept of rights. So what is a right fundamentally? Fundamentally, what a right is an action you can take that does not cause wrong, that does not cause harm, that does not violate the rights of other people. This is what's meant by the whole idea of my rights end where your rights begin. You see, is it my right to put whatever I want into my body? If I want to take heroin, hell, if I want to eat some freaking pebbles off the ground, that's my right to do so. Why? Because this is my body. I own my body the same way you own your body. So for me to choose to ingest something, even if that thing is poisonous, I'm not harming any other beings that are not consenting to the situation. There is no coercion, there is no duress, there is no harm, there is no violence being engaged. It is simply me exercising my volition over what is my rightful property, which is my body in this case. Now, would it be a right for me to forcibly administer heroin to somebody else? No, it would not, obviously. That would be a violation of the person in question's bodily autonomy. If they own their body, They are the only one that gets to decide what goes into it or what does not go into it, in the same way that I'm the only one that gets to decide what goes into my body or does not go into my body. Very, very simple. And the same logic applies for why it's not okay to violently assault people. You don't own other people's bodies, so it's not okay for you to injure someone else's body. However, if I wanted to, for whatever bizarre reason, break my own pinky finger, that would be my right to do so, because it's my body. Yes, I may be injuring myself and hurting myself, but I have consented to it, and I have the rightful authority over my own body to consent to things with my body. I want to chop my hand off, I'll chop my fucking hand off. I wouldn't advise that you do that, but if you want to, no one else in reality has the right to stop you. And this is what makes drug prohibition fundamentally immoral, is because it's the claim of ownership over other people's bodies. So let's keep going. What about slavery? Telling someone else, I'm going to hold you under duress, under threat of violence, and I'm going to force you to work, and I'm going to take the product of your labor, or a percentage of the product of your labor, aka taxation. This is not a right. This is not moral, because no one else owns you, your mind, your emotions, your body, your actions. That is all the product of your consciousness. And when you use your body to work, to produce fruits of your labor, whether that's you're manufacturing physical objects or you're working in exchange for money, the fruits of your labor are also your rightful property because they have come as a result of your effort, your volition, and work that you have done with your body, which is also your property. So this is why taxation is also immoral, because no one else has a right to use violence to forcibly take the product of your labor. That is immoral. And in fact, taxation is simply a euphemism for slavery. If you pay, let's say, 25% of your gross revenue in a year as taxes, what that basically means is for the first quarter of the year, you are working as a slave for the government, and they're telling you, if you do not give us our cut, then we will engage in violence against you. And then for the other 3 quarters of the year, then you can work for yourself. Then you can keep the result of your labors. Totally immoral. But see, the problem is that people have an ends justify the means attitude, and they think that rights are malleable, and that the authority of a perceived institution of authority within society, that they are able to supersede what would be a natural right based on some convoluted justification for how this is actually better for the greater good, which is the first step towards totalitarianism, is focusing on the greater good as opposed to liberty and rights and individual freedom. So in the case of taxation, people say, oh, but who would build the roads? Oh, but we need a military to protect us, which is a whole nother fucking rabbit hole. But anyways, oh, who would build the roads? Who would fund the schools? Etc., etc. And it's all from this mindset of, well, I want this shit to be provided to me and to society, and so therefore I'm going to justify theft and slavery, which is what taxation is, because I believe that the money that we're going to forcibly seize based on this taxation is going to be put to an end that I justify as being an acceptable trade-off. And again, this is complete bullshit. It's all rooted in this concept that rights are malleable and that there's some type of opinion or rationality or justification that needs to come into play to weigh the options of, yeah, I mean, I know it's like, you should have the right to defend yourself, but but people having guns scares me, and it makes me feel like, bad stuff is going to happen in society, so I think the government should take your guns. This type of thinking is just not grounded in first principles. It's not grounded in an actual logical substrate that is morally consistent. And the basic concept behind government and jurisdiction is rooted in the concept of moral relativism, that we get to just make up the rules, and that the masses, the peasants, must comply with those rules, and if we don't comply with the arbitrary dictates of the authorities, then we are somehow bad people. This is absolute bullshit. If you're living in an immoral system that's creating arbitrary dictates that do not align with morality, objective morality, then it's absolutely within your right to resist that system. Yet most of society has this Stockholm Syndrome type attitude where it's like, we really look at the people who make these rules, these authorities, almost like a priest class, oh, don't, even just, if you, in society, most people, if they hear that somebody has been to prison, or they have legal trouble, or whatever, that's all it takes for that person to now judge the individual in question as being morally inferior. But what if they got sent to prison for smoking some weed, or taking some mushrooms, or some acid, or even smoking meth? None of those things makes that person a bad person. Yes, if you're smoking meth, you probably don't have the most self-control, and you may be fucking up in your own personal life. And yeah, I do advocate that you don't do meth, and you take responsibility for your life, and you get your life together, because that is actually like an ethical impetus at a higher level once you get past this remedial stage. But this shit is remedial. You can't run around causing harm to innocent people. That's wrong. If you're not doing that, if you're just minding your own fucking business and you're not hurting anyone, then all of those behaviors are rights. All those behaviors are rights. And if somebody does try and violate your rights and stop you from doing things that are within your right to do, if somebody does engage in harm against you, or duress, which is the threat of physical harm should you not comply with their dictates, then you absolutely have the right to defend yourself. Because what is a right except something that is morally justified to be defended? So to recap, rights are objective, and they exist in reality, and it is about what does or does not constitute harm, or duress, or coercion, or a violation of another's property. And our property basically comes down to, we own our mind, we own our body, we own our spirit, we own the products and the fruits of our labor. And the things that we rightfully possess to be able to provide for ourselves and be independent. The food and the water and the land that we live on, and the means of defense that we have to protect ourselves. All of these things are rightful property, so long as we acquire them rightfully and we don't acquire them wrongfully through stealing from people or threatening people. So as long as your property has all been rightfully acquired, no one else has the right to impinge on that. And if they were to do so, they would be in the wrong. It's actually very simple. It's actually very simple because it's just encoded in the reality that we all objectively live in together. But people want to create these weird arbitrary moral philosophies about justifying the use of violence to enact a certain worldview for how people must behave that's not rooted in objective morality, and that's not rooted in the concepts of what constitutes harm and what constitutes rightful property. People are often airy fairyland thinking, oh yeah, we can just redistribute wealth using violence and make everyone equal, and, communism will make the world a great, prosperous place. And this is all complete bullshit. Bullshit. Because what you have to realize is that the results that we receive in society are based on whether or not we can align with objective reality. If you have totally false and erroneous information about how reality works, about the difference between right and wrong, or God forbid, you don't even think that right and wrong exist and that you think that that's all just illusion, which is a completely diseased mindset. If you are misaligned from reality in your own beliefs and your own perception of reality, then you're going to take actions and behaviors which are misaligned with reality, and you're not going to manifest the results you want in the world. You're going to create chaotic outcomes based in confusion, based in misunderstanding, and ultimately, it's going to create all of the negative things that we say that we want, that we don't want. It's going to create, poverty and chaos and confusion and ultimately slavery. Slavery is the ultimate result of people in a society not understanding the objective difference between right and wrong behavior. It is the ultimate result of people in a society not understanding what is their rightful property and what is not their rightful property. Because when people don't understand this, they advocate for totally immoral systems that do violate people's rights, and they think that those systems are going to somehow lead to a free and prosperous society. But they don't understand that there is an objective mathematical equation that determines whether we have a free and prosperous society. And that equation is essentially that as the people in a society act more and more morally, as they become more and more aware of what constitutes their rightful property and does not, and they understand to a better and better degree and act in alignment with action, they only take actions that are within their rights, that do not violate other people's property rights and their rights of bodily autonomy. As people do that, and they engage in less and less harmful behaviors that violate, coerce, enslave, and harm innocent people that have not first transgressed upon them, as we increase the level of moral behavior and we decrease the level of immoral behavior in a society, freedom and prosperity result. Conversely, if people in a society are running around and they are acting in ways that are violating each other's rights, they are causing harm to innocent people, they are using duress and coercion to enslave people, what do you think is going to be the outcome of that? Chaos, poverty, famine, and ultimately slavery. That is what results. And that is objective. Those are objective dynamics within reality, which is why morality is objective. Because morality is fundamentally a science of understanding what behaviors we must take to reach the conditions that we say that we want. Everyone says they want to be free and prosperous and healthy. But there are conditions required to achieve that state. There are requirements. So you can't just come up with your own moral philosophy or your own moral ideology about what constitutes right and wrong and just expect that adherence to that is going to produce the results you want. If you're not aligned to reality, to truth, in your moral philosophy, you're going to create chaotic results and you're going to get the opposite of what you say that you want. And all this to say, to bring it back to the initial topic, it starts with language. We need to stop saying as a society that so-and-so government organization or alphabet soup agency has taken our rights. Your rights can never be taken. They can never be taken. You will always have your rights. Your right to bodily autonomy, your right to defend yourself with firearms, your right to not be taxed and enslaved, your right to speak your mind as long as you're not using your words to engage in libel or slander or incitement of violence. As long as you're using your words peacefully, your right to express whatever beliefs you want. And hundreds and hundreds of thousands of millions and infinite rights that we have of behaviors that we can take that do not violate other people's rights and cause harm. We have those rights. We have always had those rights. They are eternal. They are encoded into the fundamental reality of nature and the reality and the nature of consciousness. Government can never take your rights. It can only violate them. And we need to start saying it like that. We need to start saying not that so-and-so institution is taking our right to free speech. No, it's violating our right to free speech. Gun control isn't taking your right to bear firearms, it's violating your right to bear firearms. And why do I think it's so important that we use this language? Because the language of saying that so-and-so organization or authority is taking your rights is actually unconsciously reinforcing the authority of that institution. It's saying that they can take your rights, which is illusion. It's not true. None of these rights can be taken by any of these institutions. All that can occur is that they convince you that they can take your rights. And they do that through your subconscious mind, through symbolism, through the trappings, the religious trappings, and they do it through the language. So stop saying that our rights are being taken. They are not. We still have our rights. It's just that the level of violation is constantly increasing because we live in a society that is fundamentally based on slavery and erroneous concepts, where people do think that taxation is moral, and it's not. Where people do think that authority vested in man and the concepts of jurisdiction and arbitrary dictates that must be followed by the peons, people think that's moral, and it's not. So let's change the language. Let's start talking about how our rights are being violated. Because then maybe people will wake up and realize that this isn't a justified system, that it's completely farcical and not based in truth or objective morality. And then maybe people can get a little bit upset about the fact that their rights are not being taken. They're being violated. And what do you do when somebody violates you? You defend yourself. If you have any courage. Now, am I advocating, extreme means of that? Not necessarily. You have to be pragmatic and prudent. Unfortunately, in our society, if you as an individual try and go out there and defend your rights, you're going to end up in a cell very quickly, because the people that basically have the, not a total monopoly on force, but people that have a perceived monopoly on righteous force, which is not actually righteous, but the police and the military, they will punish you for defending your rights. They will lock you in a cage or kill you, murder your ass, if you try and defend yourself from their tyrannical bullshit. Try getting pulled over by a police officer and not paying their stupid fucking tickets. You're going to cause yourself a world of hurt. And, but the thing is, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be within your right to defend yourself from that traffic cop. You would. They are in the moral wrong. However, say in my case, I'm dealing with a rather bullshit ticket at the moment, and I've made the pragmatic decision that, I'm going to have to play ball and give the mafia their fucking blood money. And am I happy about it? No, not at all. But the reality is that I need to also be pragmatic with my energy and understand that it's not worth it for me to get caught up in this. And you have to pick your battles, because I recognize that for me to just pay this stupid fucking ticket and move on, and even if it's immoral and it's completely based in bullshit, move on from it. And now I'm going to use that energy that I've saved by not getting caught up in that battle to now go and spread the information that I understand about what the nature of the system that we live in is, and what a true and objective understanding of morality constitutes, so that I can actually, make a significant effort to push back against the malaise and the diseased mindset of our society that has put us in a condition where so many people support these institutions that I don't really have a chance of, winning that righteous fight in this small domain. So I'm pragmatic. I have big goals for what I would like to contribute to the world, knowledge-wise, and all these different things. So I advise you to be pragmatic as well once you have an understanding of this, because trust me, once you realize how fucking bullshit taxation is, licensing laws are, gun restrictions, all of this shit is completely fucking farcical. And it's infuriating. Like, trust me, once you really get to understand the depth of the immorality of this system, it takes some self-control to not just, fucking fly off the handle. But we have to be pragmatic. And we have to choose our battles and put our energy towards really waking people up to this stuff, because knowledge is the only way we're going to get out of this predicament. We are so deep in the hole of negative karma. We are so deep in the hole of institutionalized enslavement on a global scale right now, especially after what's happened in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 with all of the lockdowns, which, where does the term lockdown come from? It comes from prison. Lockdown is a term from prison, when they shut down the cell blocks and they make you all stay in your fucking little cells for like weeks or months on end. Why do you think they picked that term? Because they want you to think of yourself as prisoners and slaves. Not an accident, So we've got a fucking deep pit of karmic bullshit that we have to climb out of as a society. And unfortunately, not everyone's on board with that. In fact, the majority of people in society support this sick, twisted system based in moral relativism and in authority, false authority. And so we have a lot of work to do. And that starts with not being ignorant of the problems, of not, sticking your head in the sand and saying, I don't want to pay attention to this because it's too horrible. And fuck, I went through that, that took me a couple years to get through, to be honest. Not that I've never really been that ignorant to where I would stick my head in the sand after I realized what was going on, but more so just a lot of my depression in my teenage years came from understanding the nature of the system that we live in and realizing that this planet has basically been turned into a giant slave plantation, a giant open air prison, and that governments are basically just the different little, plantation owner kind of slave drivers that run things for the actual hidden controllers who sit behind the governments, because they aren't the ones that call the shots. They're just a control mechanism for the ones who really run the world. And when I realized all this shit, and I realized how dark it goes with the blackmail networks and all that stuff, the Jeffrey Epstein type of stuff, and I got so depressed for a few years, and I would say justifiably so. You have to really tap into something deep to get through that once you realize, and that's why a lot of people won't look at this shit, because down deep in their subconscious, they don't truly believe that they even have the spiritual resolve to make it through that, In fact, honestly, to be frank, a lot of people, if they got like a full download of how fucked up society is, all at once, they would probably just fucking kill themselves. They'd be like, oh my god, this is a hell realm. I'm fucking done with this. Bye. And I can't, completely fault that response, especially if you're mentally weak, because we're trained to be mentally weak in this society. So if you don't have that, like, righteous anger unlocked in your soul to where you see this and you're like, fuck that, I want to do something about it. If you don't have that, it's understandable that a lot of people's response is just to crumble and just be like, ugh, I give up, But we can't fucking give up. It's our ancestors giving up on freedom and giving up on fighting back against this system that has put us in this predicament, We can bitch and complain about what previous generations have done to this planet and the slave society that they've created, or we can go try and fix it, But people that just sit and bitch all day, they don't get a lot done. But that's not my goal with this channel. My goal with this channel is not to just sit and bitch. My goal is to analyze problems and help bring understanding and clarity and knowledge to various situations so that hopefully those of you who take an interest in this channel can learn from the information that I've taken in. Because I have done a lot of work to get to the level of understanding that I'm at now. And I certainly don't think I'm at the end of the road. But I understand the remedial shit. I understand what constitutes harm. I understand what, the principle of non-aggression and the principle of self-defense are. I know what rights are. And I see how sick society is. And I have come to realize that I have a moral obligation to do something about it. And in the modern day, that basically means putting information out on the internet, because that is the highest leverage activity that we can possibly do in this informational war. Which is why censorship is so rampant in the modern era. It's because the controlling class knows that they must prevent this type of information from getting out, because it is only through the compliance of the slave class and the ignorance of the enforcer class, the police and military, and all the government agents. It is only through that compliance and that ignorance that the controllers stay in power. They have no power except what they take from us. They are spiritual vampires. That's what taxation is, if you really get down to it. It is spiritual vampirism. They are stealing your life force energy, because you spend your time, which is your spiritual currency. You spend your time and your attention to produce results in the physical world, and then they take a percentage of that. they're taking your life. And I'm not being like metaphorical. I'm saying they are actually taking your life. They are actually taking your time and the product of your time, and they are seizing it from you by violence. And then they're using that to go build their crazy giant surveillance grid and their police state and give fucking police tanks and RPGs and shit like that, you know? Why do you think the police are so militarized? It's because the controller class is terrified of the populace ever actually waking up and throwing off their chains. Because the controller class understands that we, as the peasants, have the inherent God-given right. I'm not a Christian. I'm just using that term. You know, call it karmic law, call it God's law, whatever the fuck you want. I'm not religious. Religion is bullshit. Religion is one of the biggest problems on this planet. But I do understand spirituality, and I know that there is a divine source that has created this world. And you can know that too, that is a state of consciousness that you can achieve where you have gnosis of these things. A lot of people like to philosophize and speculate about God. God exists. You can talk to him, or it, not a him. If you think God is a him, you're not talking about God. You're talking about some fucking mind control operation. But anyways, tangenting. People who run society understand that we always have the right to overthrow our rulers, and it's only through our consent and our ignorance that they stay on top. So they must control the information to do so. And that's why they're bringing in ever and ever increasing levels of censorship. We need to get our ass in gear and start putting this information out there on a massive level, because we don't have all the time in the world. Look at the trajectory of society over the past decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. Do you think freedom is increasing in the world? If you think that, you're fucking insane. It's absolutely not. Freedom is being destroyed rapidly. See, they can't take our rights from us, but they can take our external freedom. They can never take your internal freedom if you are a spiritually aware being. They can only take your internal freedom by keeping you from the information of spiritual growth. Once you reach a certain level of spiritual development, you cannot be truly enslaved within yourself. But you can be enslaved externally, and you can have your freedom in the physical world taken, and that is occurring to a massive degree. So let's fucking do something about it, everyone. Let's wake people up. Let's not be cowards. Let's be courageous enough to say this shit. Because half of the problem is that most people won't say this shit to people. They won't tell people, no, taxation is immoral, and here's why, and I'm going to stick to my guns because I know that I'm in the right, because I've philosophically examined this domain of knowledge for fucking years. You know, I'm not advising that you just take what I'm saying here, you believe me, and then you just go regurgitate it. What I'm saying is, do your own research. Figure out that what I'm saying here is true. Because it is true, and you can discover that it's true. That's what I did. It's not like this information is my information. It's not. Not. I just happen to have found the right teachers and have been open to the right sources of information in my life, that truth found me before I got too wrapped up in some bullshit ideology that made me ignorant to truth. So this channel is going to be dedicated to philosophy, to spirituality, to understanding our place in this world, to understanding ourselves, to understanding the dynamics that are going on in society. And it's going to be kind of split between talking about the external problems and the issues with the system, and understanding why the system is wrong and the ways in which it's wrong, and what would constitute a superior society, a more evolved society. And then also, I want to talk a lot about, as cliche of a term as it is, mental health. In fact, I would actually call it spiritual health. I want to talk about, raising your vibration and cleansing yourself of negative energies and thought patterns and belief systems and psychic parasites, if you will, and how to get yourself to a point of clarity internally where you actually can start doing the great work of helping to free humanity. Because before you can get out there and start helping to promote freedom on an external level, you have to become free within yourself. And that in and of itself is a lot of work. It's taken me almost a decade now. And I'm at the point now where I can confidently say I'm pretty damn free internally. And I'm pretty damn free of a lot of those spiritual maladies that used to plague me. I've been very depressed. I've been suicidal in the past. I've had very fucked up relationships. All that stuff, you know. I've made mistakes. I've done things that are wrong. I've hurt people, you know. It's not like I'm perfect. So I certainly don't want to sit here and talk to anybody like I'm on a pedestal. I just you know, I understand the information well enough to understand that I have a moral impetus to talk about it and spread it. Because if the people that understand this shit stay silent, we're going deeper into chains, and eventually there will not be the opportunity to spiritually free yourself and then work towards freeing humanity as a whole in the external world. We have limited time. And yes, you should feel a sense of urgency because we have limited time. And let that drive you. Let that be a source of motivation to say, I'm not going to give up on myself, and I'm not going to give up on making myself into a powerful, spiritually awake and aware, high vibration person who's operating from love and knowledge and courage and wisdom. So do that. Become that person. And the path will be laid clear to you. Because when you start working with the forces of evolution, the forces of higher will in this world that actually do seek to see and want to see humanity freed from its bondage, when you start working with those forces, your life will accelerate and catapult into levels of beauty that you can't even understand. My life has improved so much in the past few years since I finally shouldered that burden within my own psyche of realizing that I have this task before me. And now I'm finally starting to actually get to the point where that can bear fruit, all the work that I've put in, because I've known that it wouldn't be prudent for me to just simply jump on the internet and start spouting out of my fucking ass about shit that I only halfway understand. So for the past few years, I've really been trying to deepen my level of knowledge and understanding and deepen my level of integrity so that I can have the confidence and the conviction to speak the truth and live it, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, you know. And there's been ways in which I've had to fix my own psyche before I felt like I could talk about this stuff without being a hypocrite. But now I'm there, and so my intent and my goal is to keep making videos of this nature and to discuss these topics and to help wake people up and help spread this information, and to do so at a high level, a level that has nuance and particularity for the finer details and isn't just simplistic slogans, you know. Too many people, they get just a very surface level, and then they never go deeper. They just take that surface level and they run with it, and they're missing a lot of elements, and so they ultimately end up doing more harm than good because they advocate for things without a full understanding of the reasons behind what they're advocating for, even if there's a nugget of truth there. Okay, I think this video has gone on long enough. Hopefully you got some value from it and you're resonating with the message that I'm kind of putting out there here. And if you like what I have to say, feel free to subscribe and blah, 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 all the standard YouTuber shit. I will be making more videos in this vein. So I hope you stick around, and I look forward to speaking to you in the future. Hope you have a blessed day.